Oh my god, I'm so excited! Hello fellow APUSH students, this is your host, Kevin Magana. Alright, Daddy, chill. Today we'll be learning about the diplomatic affairs between the United States and Japan during the time period of World War II and how that would lead up to the following of bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki on August 6, 1945 throughout August 9, 1945. The events leading up to the atomic bombing of both cities began with Japan's aggressive nature in their invasion and their tripartite pact with Germany and Italy on September 27, 1940. The United States and Japan were both involved in World War II, right? And were on opposing sides, which automatically built up tensions between the both nations. The Manhattan Project was a race to create the first nuclear bomb and one of the most top-secret projects in the United States history, the first super weapon in history, and it was first tested in Almaguer, New Mexico. But why was it put to the test in early August 9, 1945? Well, this is how it happened. In order to understand the diplomatic affairs between Japan and the United States in World War II, we must go back, way back. Even more back than the World War II itself, right? So which was in the 1930s when Japan made a crucial decision to be a more industrial nation. They would invade many places, and during this time the US was well known to be an industrial powerhouse as well. So these places I was talking about was, of course, Southeast Asia. And the United States was kind of focused on the oil and resources in Southeast Asia as well, which in September 19, 1931, throughout February 27, 1932, Japan decided to invade Manchuria, and later throughout the decade would slowly invade Southeast Asia. Then in 1937, the Second Sino-Japanese War happened, as Japan would go to war with China, invading many cities. This would agitate the United States that they had a valuable trading relationship with China. So of course this diplomatic relationship between Japan and the United States was really kind of building up even more. So the United States, seeing China as a valuable ally, assisted, but it was minimal assistance of course, such as diplomatic denunciations. They would send small amounts of supplies to China, to the Chinese government. Then in 1939, the United States had received a message that Germany was beginning to work on nuclear weapons, in which the United States decided to put brilliant minds together, along with the military of course, in order to build an atomic bomb. This is known as a super weapon. While the United States government wasn't fully on board on the idea, the genius scientist Albert Einstein would write a letter to President Roosevelt about the project. They accepted and the Manhattan Project was made. But it was top secret, so top secret that in fact Congress didn't even know about it. Kind of makes me think, was the Illuminati part of it? Well, all jokes aside, back to reality. The Manhattan Project was actually the most worked on in Los Alamos, New Mexico, and not in New York, such as the name suggests, I know. The potential weapon role of uranium was being researched, and both scientists Enrico Fermi and Leo Szilard was being funded, in which they worked on the idea of concentrating isotopes by removing the other isotopes, otherwise known as radioactive isotope radiation. Even though I'm talking about all of this, the Manhattan Project wasn't fully formed and established at this time. Only the research in nuclear fission and isotope separation was being done. Anyways, we'll get back to this later as we introduce our guests Rafael Guerrero and Moises Machik, who will speak upon the Pearl Harbor attack in a different dimension. 1, 2, 3, go.
So, you want to know about Pearl Harbor? Well, that had to do with the Pacific Campaign because in the time, Japan was trying to conquer a bunch of Southeast Asia, including Indonesia, China, Malaysia, what present day those nations are. And that did not settle right with the United States. They had a Pacific fleet around those countries and they had some territory there. And that was a little bit about like 4,000 miles away from Hawaii, which they did not feel comfortable with as well. So what had occurred was that Japan and the United States, they started going into some very furious talks and diplomatic relationships, they broke down and tensions occurred. And so Japan thought that war with the United States was inevitable. So what they did was that before anything, they tried doing a surprise and sneak attack in which they came 4,000 miles away from Japan to Pearl Harbor around Honolulu and on Hawaii, and they just bombed them.
So as Rafa and Moises, our guests of the show, talked about Pearl Harbor, in perspective of the United States, the Japanese government made a surprise attack that was seen out of nowhere, which then initiated them into World War II. The United States clearly held a grudge against the Japanese for bombing, so much in fact that they put the Japanese who resided in the United States into internment camps. The U.S. had forced the relocation of more than 100,000 Japanese Americans into incarceration throughout the years of February 19, 1942, throughout March 20, 1946. Clearly, the United States and Japan diplomatic relationship wasn't so good at this time. Clearly, putting Japanese and the U.S. civilians accepting this matter clearly showed that their kind of international relationship was broken. And many Japanese Americans were discriminated against and were called Japs. Clearly, the international relationship once again between the United States and Japan was broken. Then in 1942, the ACE group joined the Manhattan Project, causing a shift to power to be more dependent on the military for the project. The Manhattan Project actually began in 1942 as President Roosevelt authorized the project in December 28, 1942. In January 1, 1943, the Project Y was formed, and the bombs were to be built and tested in Los Alamos Laboratory in northern New Mexico. Although the project was being led by scientist Robert Oppenheimer, it was maintained and regulated by the military. Then the fatal day to test the bomb came, which in July 16, 1945, in Los Alamos Grotto, New Mexico, in the middle of the desert, the first super weapon was successfully tested. This was called the Trinity test. Come on, revolutionary. The testing created a 40,000 mushroom cloud that could be seen miles away. Good thing it was in a remote desert, right? People would be like, oh my god, what the... Anyways, after the successful testing, the scientists started developing two different types of bombs. One was called Little Boy. I don't know why they call it that, honestly. But it was a very destructive nuclear-based weapon. And the other one was called Fat Man. Who came up with these names? God. It was a plutonium-based super weapon. Japan's city, Hiroshima, and Nagasaki were to face these horrific weapons later on in the year. Although before that, there was the ending of World War II, where in Potsdam Conference, Churchill, Stalin, and Truman spoke upon what to do with Germany and how to split it into 4 different zones. Although there was also the growing concern of Japan's aggressive nature, so in order to subdue Stalin and have the Soviet support, they would agree to his terms. This was all in order to have a better chance of taking down Japan, although Japan was stubborn and sturdy and would go down so easily. And wouldn't go down so easily, sorry about that. This was when the United States, holding their long-remembered 5-year grudge, proposed to use their top-secret atomic super weapon against Japan. The United States had already suffered many casualties throughout the April of 1945 against Japan's military. The U.S. had realized that they would have much more casualties than they had in the entire World War if they kept fighting off Japan. The United States saw that the only solution to end this entire war was to use an atomic weapon, the atomic super weapon, that is. In Japan's perspective, they have too much pride to surrender and decided to fight to the bitter end, in their exact words. The problem probably got worse when the Allies demanded for Japan's unconditional surrender in the Potsdam Conference, and if they wouldn't surrender, they would face utter and prompt destruction. The United States wanted to end the World War quickly. Not only that, they wanted to demonstrate their dominant power to the world, to rush it to Japan and to all the countries in the world. So they were really inclined to use the atomic bomb.
So what if U.S. never dropped the atomic bomb?
Well, that's easy, little Brandon. If the U.S. never dropped the atomic bomb, they would go with their second option, Operation Downfall, which is basically like a huge invasion on Japan, and it would cost 1 million casualties, actually. So that's the way they had to go with the atomic bomb. But just in case they didn't have the atomic bomb, they would actually pick Operation Downfall as the only solution, which would result in 1 million casualties. Let me say it one more time, 1 million. Probably more than they suffered, well, definitely, for sure, more than they suffered in the entire World War II. So yeah, that's to answer your question. The majority of Americans are supporting the atomic bomb due to their long-standing grudges against the Japanese. Once more, the relationship between Japan and the United States was practically broken, and they showed no mercy or resentment. The fateful day of August 6, 1945, the American bomber pilot Enola Gay had carried the 5-ton atomic bomb Little Boy over the city of Hiroshima. The bomb was dropped immediately. It's not funny. And immediately killed 80,000 people, and later on would kill thousands of more Japanese. So you might be asking, why don't I have my socks on? Shut up, that's not important. The Japanese, still resilient and surrendering, had to suffer once more with the second atomic bomb, Fat Man. The American bomber pilot Charles Charles' original target was the city of Kokura, although the clouds were too thick, so the bomb was dropped in Nagasaki, having even more devastating effects because it was a plutonium-based bomb. This second bomb had convinced the emperor to finally surrender on August 15, 1945. Even though the Japanese citizens were warned about these bombs and were told to evacuate by the Americans themselves, they still hold deep resentment towards the Americans and their inhumane methods of dropping this devastating bomb. So after all of this, the United States had sent military personnel in Japan in order to enforce political, economic, and social reforms. So right up here, right here, I hope it's right here. Anyways, right up here you can see the depth and ruin of the atomic bombs, right? It shows a kind of like a grim person with like a briefcase, sorry about that, a briefcase showing the atomic, what are you doing? Atomic bombs, right? And it shows that the person, it has depth and ruin on it because of like how the atomic bomb was really devastating and it really kind of like messed up everything. And right up here, right here, it shows like a big crater and it says which one's grave, end of warfare or end of civilization, which basically kind of talks about how like the United States decision did it really like bring peace or did it bring even more warfare, you know? Then oh, it's time for the mystery document. Why didn't you say so? Oh, so it says the Joe broadcast. Sorry, I meant to say voice. To our good and lowest subjects, after pondering deeply in the general trends of the world and actual conditions obtaining to our empire today, we have decided to effect a settlement of the present situation by resorting to an extraordinary measure. Who could this be talking about? We have ordered our government to communicate to the governments of the United States, Great Britain, China, and the Soviet Union that our empire accepts the provisions of their joint declaration. To strive for the common prosperity and happiness of all nations as well as the security and well-being of our subjects is a solemn obligation which has been handed down by our imperial ancestors and which we lay that close to heart. Indeed, we declare war on America and Britain out of our, I don't know, anyways. It's Henry Clay, right? It's not Henry Clay, bro. Come on. It's clear. It's right there. Man, I know you said put a punishment. You don't have to make that hard. It's Hirohito? What? That's crazy. I see it now. Because it talks about how Hirohito surrendered because of the Nagasaki and Hiroshima bombs, huh? Yeah, because clearly Hirohito saw that he had to surrender and there was no other choice to find peace. So he had to find peace with the other nations by surrendering because of the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombs. That's cute. Throughout the World War II time period, it was clear about the diplomatic relationship between Japan and the United States was broken. Things such as an economic embargo, U.S. support for China, Pearl Harbor, and atomic bombs drops demonstrated all of this. Even though later on in the century, the United States will have become with good terms with Japan, during World War II, they were vicious enemies. The diplomatic relationship between Japan and the United States was broken during this time period. They weren't friends, they were clear enemies. Everything they did was against each other, like Pearl Harbor, the atomic bomb. It was clear grudges hold for 5 years long. And yeah, that concludes our video. That's kind of all I wrote, man. I don't know why you're still recording. That's kind of it. Yeah. Thanks. Bye. Get out of here.